5-year deal, that is a meaningful amount of money. Going to cost you another starter. We've seen this time and time again, be it with CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. They want to wait, and by waiting, it just gets more expensive.
Yeah, and they continue to behave as though they think the price tag on great players is going to go down, and it never does. So, Dominique Foxworth, I've been asking this question about a lot of teams this week, and I'll ask it here about the Dallas Cowboys. In your opinion, what would constitute a successful season for Dallas this year?
I think it's the NFC Championship game at least. I know that seems like a lofty expectations for a team that only won 7 games last year, but you have to remember that Dak Prescott was injured for almost half of the season, and the defense kind of fell apart with the addition of Eberflus as the defensive coordinator. They can really, I think, maximize some of that talent, and the receiving core with Dak Prescott obviously can put up big numbers. He can play MVP caliber football, so I think this team has a chance if they put it all together, depending on how well their new coaching staff gels. So I guess it's kind of an old coaching staff with a little bit of new leadership. We'll see how good this team does, but I do think the expectations remain high in Dallas.
Shefty, what is your sense of the vibes now with Brian Schottenheimer moving in as their head coach?
Look, I think when teams make a head coaching change, there's new blood and new energy in the building, but that really does seem to be the case. When you listen to the players and the people around the organization talk about the effect that Brian Schottenheimer has had so far on this team, they feel like it's a whole new environment, a whole new attitude, a whole new atmosphere. And I think everybody feels reinvigorated there. They feel refreshed. They feel like something positive is really moving in the right direction for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, we'll see how that translates into the regular season and if that holds up once you start losing games. They haven't lost a game yet.
Right. Everything
feels great. But there does seem to be this positive energy emanating from the organization right now.
You know, Greedy, one underrated aspect of this is all the players are getting back from IR. Dak Prescott, DeMar Overshown, Trayvon Diggs. Those are 3 really good players. Obviously started with your franchise quarterback. If they come back and play 17 games, that's a big difference.
All right, so they start their training camp in 25 days. Shefty says their vibes are high. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Defensive end Trey Hendrickson looking to get paid in Cincinnati, and vibes there feel sort of low. What is the latest on that situation?
This is really troubling, I think, because these two sides have been at this for so long. And yes, they're talking, but they're not making any progress. They cannot even agree on the length of the deal right now. Forget about the numbers. And as training camp gets closer and closer, Trey Hendrickson's going to have a significant decision to make, and that'll be, does he show up to training camp? Does he show up to training camp and hold in? Or does he simply bypass training camp altogether the way he did with the mandatory minicamp? Now, if you skip training camp, there are fines in the collective bargaining agreement. He would be fined $50,000 a day. But I know our friend Mike Tannenbaum at the table knows how this works. If and when the two sides ever could reach a contract agreement, then they would just add in more money and say, here's the money to cover the $50,000 a day, because Mike is very quick to pick up bills at the Roscoe Diner and overpaid, unpaid mandatory fines.
You do it in a lovingly way, like when your kids ask you for more money. Sure, absolutely, no problem.
But this is another, all kidding aside, because, I mean, that part of it is maybe he'll hold out, maybe he'll hold in one way or another. He's not happy. They paid their receivers. Their defense was as bad can possibly be last year, and he is overwhelmingly their best player. So what?
You got to get the deal done. And Hembo gave me some great stats. So the last few years, 35 sacks, leads the league. And you look at Myles Garrett, again, at $40 million a year, guys, that's almost 50 cents on the dollar in terms of what he's making. And to Adam's point, Greedy, I think when you speak to people around the league, you look at the Jalen Ramsey situation in Jacksonville, I think that's the blueprint that teams worry about more than the fine. Because you could, all kidding aside, address it with money. But when you have a player in your building every day that doesn't want to be there, that's a real issue.
Okay. So what if you're the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson doesn't show up to training camp, and your first-round draft pick at a time where everybody else has their first-round draft pick signed also isn't in training camp? What's going to be the mood and vibe in the Bengals camp where this team has started slower to open the season than any team in football the last few years? They lost at home to New England last year to open the season. They're trying to turn it around. The storyline, if Trey Hendrickson and their first-round draft pick Shamar Stewart are not in camp on the first day, that's not going to be the type of mood and atmosphere that you're looking for when camp opens.
Let's ask our player, Dominique Foxworth, what do you think of how this situation is going, and what impact do you think it has on Joe Burrow and the Bengals' chances of doing something special this year?
I mean, I tend to think that distractions and that sort of stuff is overplayed, but in this particular instance, with the Bengals' history and with the way that they sign these receivers, it feels like that could be a place where this type of distraction could become a problem. And I do think that they are a team that believes they're in their Super Bowl window. That's why they paid both their receivers. That's why they paid their quarterback, and their best defensive player at a premier position is not getting paid. It doesn't seem like they're taking this seriously and quibbling with their rookie draft pick over a kind of nonsense clause in his contract. Seems like a team that's not serious about winning a championship, which I think the players recognize, and especially a player like Joe Burrow, who was very active in talking about the roster decisions that they should make. They recognize that, and I think Adam makes a great point. They're a team that notoriously starts slow. You're not helping yourself by not having your best players in camp to get ready for the first game of the year.
I feel the need to say it one more time. Joe Burrow had the best season of any quarterback in the NFL last year, and they missed the playoffs. That's how bad that defense was. Shefty, let's get to one more, because we also have the Steelers and we have T.J. Watt with his contract situation. So what about that one?
Well, the last time these two sides went through a similar dance, they got a deal done shortly before the start of the regular season. And I don't think anybody doesn't think that the Steelers and somebody as important as T.J. Watt won't find a way to work out a deal and keep him in Pittsburgh. I don't think this particular negotiation has had the animosity that the one between the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson has had. This one seems to be calmer, more measured, and I think everybody's optimistic that they can figure it out and will get it done. And in the end, all deals probably will get done. But this one seems like, again, in time, it'll happen.
Agree. You don't sign an aging legend in Aaron Rodgers not to have T.J. Watt in camp under contract. The question is it Donnell Hunter, 35-36? Do you go all the way up to 40 with Myles Garrett? There's a landing spot there that makes sense.
So assuming this does get done, Dominique, I'll ask you the same question I asked earlier. What in your mind would constitute a successful season with an aging star quarterback and a legendary coach in Pittsburgh?
I think for Aaron Rodgers, it's to prove that he can be a positive impact on a team again, which I think is not that difficult. But the Steelers have a different level of expectations because they've been in this kind of slightly above 500, maybe make the playoffs and lose in the first round treadmill. I think that this team and this quarterback needs to get to the divisional round at least. They need to win a wild card round or potentially win that division. I think that's the expectations for that team and that fan base, considering Aaron Rodgers' age and the track record that Tomlin and his Steelers team has had.
He was talking about he wants to finish his career with peace, love, and whatever the other...
Anonymity.
What's that?
Anonymity.
He wants to then go into anonymity, unless he runs for vice president. I mean, all these things could wind up happening. But that to me is the interesting question. Yes.
Yeah, so agree. Like,